Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to our first online virtual parent forum. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Jerry Griffin. I'm the superintendent of schools for Malone Central. The purpose of these forums really is to answer questions based on our reopening plan for the 2021 school year. Governor Cuomo made some announcements a couple of weeks ago, and he indicated that school districts should have 3 parent forums completed before August 21st and 1 teacher forum done before that date as well. We are doing all 3 of these forums today. There is a form located on our website, malonecsd.org. You can type in your questions in that form. We have several people out and about across the district monitoring that database, and I'm monitoring it as well as the questions come in. We're going to do our very best to answer every single question. I want to make some opening statements at first that I think will answer many of the questions that are asked, but I will do my best to read each question anyway. Back in March, none of us knew that hang on just a second, I'm having some technical difficulties, it looks like. Sorry about that. One of our moderators was just checking in with the audio. So I think we're up and going. Apologize for that stoppage there. Back in March, none of us realized that we'd be in this situation that we're in today. I certainly did not. I remember vividly the day where we made the decision to close school for, I believe it was 3 weeks at that time. We closed through April 20th. Which included the spring break time in April. It was just uncertain times in March, and in some cases we might still be in some uncertain times. I think we know a little bit more than we did then, but we're learning more and more every day as we deal with this crisis. Quickly after Malone Central made the decision to close in cooperation and in conjunction with the other districts in our BOCES, Governor Cuomo quickly took over that decision and made a mandate across the state for all schools in New York State that they would be closed. And he did that for 2 weeks at a time until finally at a date in May when he decided to close for the remainder of the year. That was difficult for us to deal with a closure period 2 weeks at a time. It made it difficult for us to come up with any clear, coherent plans instructionally to take us through the rest of the year. I think it would have been a lot easier had the decision been made early on to shut down for the rest of the year. We could have grouped together and come together and had a really good remote teaching plan. The 2 weeks at a time was difficult. We were given reopening guidance in mid-July, both from the Department of Health in New York State and from the State Education Department. So the guidance came in from both the state education department and the Department of Health. That was in mid-July. The plans were due on July 31st. And so we had a little less than 2 weeks to get our committees together and our plans written. And we were able to submit by the end of the day on that week of July 31st. The governor then announced in early August that schools could reopen using their plans, but he did make it a point of saying that districts should give parents the option of choosing remote instruction if they so chose that. So we posted our commitment forms online, and we're asking that parents fill out those commitment forms, letting us know what your decision is. We'd like that information by the end of the day on Friday, the 21st. So our opening committee, we had close to 60 people on that opening committee, and we followed those Department of Health guidelines as well as the State Education Department guidelines with fidelity. We took it very seriously, and everything from physical distancing to the wearing of face masks, the maximum number of people in a gathering, cleaning regimens, and particularly the cohorting of students for contact tracing purposes. So what that means is we had to group our students. Some people are calling them families, some are calling them groups or cohorts. It's all the same thing. It's a set number of students that we have that are going to be in a classroom at one time. And we're going to be able to have a record of which students are in which room on what day and how long they're there. And we're going to keep strict records on that in case we ever have to have contact tracing done back to that cohort. The worst case scenario is, if there were a positive COVID test at some point, we might be able to trace it back to maybe a specific cohort and it wouldn't impact the entire school. So that made it difficult for us when we've got roughly 2,400 students, pre-K through 12, spread across 5 buildings. 2 of our elementary schools have just enough classrooms in those buildings for what we currently need. So when we have to cohort our students into these groups, it was difficult to schedule our students. When we began the process, we had a goal of allowing all students pre-K through 12 the opportunity to have some sort of in-person instruction. We wanted every student to be able to come into the building at some point for in-person instruction. And we really wanted to get to 100%. We did quickly realize we couldn't have 100% of our students in the buildings 100% of the time. So we came up with our hybrid schedule, which is a Monday, Tuesday for group 1 and a Thursday, Friday for group 2. And then Wednesday would be a day for deep cleaning of all of those classrooms, instructional spaces, and common areas, so we don't have cohorts mixing together in the same space. Also gives our teachers an opportunity to provide some assistance with small groups or one-on-one with students in a remote fashion. And it additionally gives our teachers an opportunity to work together in case they share students in any kind of interdisciplinary area, or if our students have specialized services. One of the questions that were listed quite a bit, and frankly, some of you have asked me out and about when I've been at the grocery store, or you see me at the gas station, or even some of you walking by my house. If you hear other school districts who are opening up 100% of the time and you wonder why we're not doing that, all I can say is we follow those guidance documents 100%. We followed them with fidelity, and we just simply were not able to make it happen. We wish we were able to do that. All districts had to develop plans using the same guidelines, regardless of the infection rate for their region. And we did the very best we could. And believe me, there's nobody who wants everyone back in school and on a regular schedule more than me. For those of you who don't know me, I have a son who attends here, this district. He's a senior this year. So yeah, I get it. I understand all of the things that are being said about how much our kids lost last year, some of those traditional events that take place in the spring of the year. And I know what our class of 2020 missed out on. And I feel bad about that. And I feel bad about the class of 2021. And we're going to do our very, very best to make it a special year for all of our students, but particularly for those seniors. So we also we sent out a survey early in the summer, and we asked various questions. One of the questions was, what do parents prefer in terms of a type of education? And this survey was sent out prior to the reopening guidance being released and prior to our reopening committee convening. And at that time, we had just over 1,800 responses. So that's a really good response rate. 42% of you said you wanted full day in-person instruction with additional cleaning and safety. 23% or 22.5% wanted at-home visual distance learning only. 30.2% wanted a combination of in-person and virtual learning. 5% of you wrote in your own suggestions or ideas. So 52.7% of responders supported some form of virtual learning. An additional question, and we asked these different questions because we wanted to see if the percentages would remain somewhat the same. As a parent guardian, which of the following statements best describes your overall feeling about returning to school? 39% of you said you feel comfortable based on whatever safeguards the district has in place. 27.6% of you said only if social distancing, hand washing, face coverings, and temperature checks are strictly enforced. 15.7% stated you will not return until COVID-19 is gone. 10.5% said if social distancing, hand washing, face coverings, and temperature checks are encouraged. And then 7.2% only when there is a vaccine available. And we asked a third question. We asked it what's called a Likert scale. So you ranked your feelings from 1 through 5. So on your comfort, how comfortable you were sending your child back to school. 1 being not comfortable at all. I don't want my child to go back into the building. 5 being I'm completely comfortable with him or her being into the building. So again, over 1,800 responses, 17.5% voted for a 1, not comfortable at all. 28.4% voted a 5, very comfortable. Voted 2, basically just a step above uncomfortable, 15.7%, and a 4 was 16.1%. And right down the middle, a 3 from that 1 through 5 scale, there were 22.4% of you that said you rated a 3 on your comfort level in sending your child back to school. So my point is that all these percentages are starting to look pretty much the same. And we've put out our commitment forms, and we have, as of this morning, I believe we had 1,600 responses so far. So there's 2,400 students in the district. So 1,600 is a pretty good measure so far. And right now we have 30% of our students who have opted for remote instruction only. And we're working with those families to coordinate some communication about how we're going to open up school for them. So those same percentages are showing up across every question we've asked. And just informally, as I'm out and about in town, about half the people I speak with think that we should be back in school full time. And about half the people I speak with think we shouldn't return to school until there's a vaccine. So I understand there are people that may not like our reopening plan. and there are some people who are very happy with our reopening plan. We don't have 100% agreement in our community on this issue. And if you watch the news or just anything like that, keep an eye on news feeds, you'll see that's pretty similar to how the entire country feels. We have to do what we think is right in terms of keeping our people safe, following the guidelines strictly. And we do have it in our plan to reevaluate our plan every few weeks. Do we want to see, are there any mid-course corrections we need to make to the plan? Is there anything we could do differently? Are there ways that we could bring more students in the building as we go through the school year? Or are there things that we need to crack down on because maybe we're getting too loose with some of the guidelines? Those things happen naturally in a school year. So we want to make sure we have a set time period. We really are looking at every 6 weeks, evaluating our plan to see what changes should be made one way or another. For today, I'm going to try to answer questions by topic for this first forum. Got about 220 questions that have come in already, and just as we've been speaking here this morning, several more, a couple hundred more have come in. I won't be able to get through every single question in this first forum, but I do have another forum at 1 o'clock and one at 6 o'clock. Recordings of all 3 of these sessions will be posted on our website, malonecsd.org. We'll try to have those posted later tonight or by sometime tomorrow. So just go to malonecsd.org and you'll see the 3 links for these video posts. Do want to make a couple of statements, and before I start reading these questions. Most of the questions that have come in have been, I can tell there's been a lot of thought put behind it. I understand that you're concerned for your child's physical and social and mental health well-being. I get that. And some of you are very, very concerned about missing school. I know there's some daycare concerns, and we're going to try to address all of those issues in this forum. And then what we're going to do is our administrative team and our reopening subcommittees, we're going to take this data that we learned from these forums, these questions, and see, are there things we need to adjust before we start school? And I'll continue to stay in touch with you throughout the next 3 weeks with any updates. Any questions that call out a specific person by name, whether it be a staff member or a student, those questions will not be used. However, I will direct those questions to a specific program or building administrator. I don't want to say anything on here that could release any personal identifiable information. And I have to say this next one, I'm not going to respond or read any questions that contain any vulgar or inappropriate language. And I hope you all can understand those things. So my setup today, I have 3 monitors here. So some of the times I won't be looking directly into the camera because I've got several people helping me today. I also have my phone here, so at times I might be checking that. Someone might send me a message if there's updated information that we should share with you. So bear with me as my head might be bouncing around from screen to screen answering these questions. Let's get started. The first set of questions has to do with social distancing and masks. Can teachers choose to have their students wear masks at all when seated at their desk? So students will have to wear their masks when they're seated at their desk in the room, even when they're physically distanced of at least 6 feet. Students will have to wear those masks. Mask breaks, how frequent will they be? What if a child's not tolerating the mask? So according to the Department of Health guidelines, they're very clear in the New York State Department of Health that we should give mask breaks to people and especially students during the day. So we don't have a predetermined schedule for those breaks, but we are providing our teachers with some sample guidelines of ways that they could give those breaks throughout the day or throughout their class. What will the frequency duration of mask breaks be for younger students? The breaks will be frequent and at the discretion of the teacher. Breaks will be taken outside as much as possible and weather permitting. So a couple examples might be if the students are in rows, the teacher might say that rows 1 and 3 can take a face mask break for a few minutes. After a few minutes goes by, they mask up again, and then rows 2 and 4 can take a mask break. Another example might be, if it's a nice day out, teacher might say, let's all go outside, go for a walk, stay physically distanced from each other while we're outside, and you can remove your mask while we're outside. They might have a colleague that's taking some students outside and keeping some students in, and we could send students that are going to be physically distanced as long as we're physically distanced outside. So there's lots of ways that we could take those mask breaks during the day. Will the students have to wear a mask all day, even at their desks? I've addressed that. They will be required to wear a mask all day unless instructed to take a mask break by the teacher. Will the students be allowed to change face masks during the day without being in trouble? I'd like to send my children in with a morning and afternoon mask. Yeah, that's a that's a good idea. So yeah, this could be possible. That could just be switched out during one of those breaks, or during lunch. Students aren't going to have to wear a mask while they're eating their lunch. That might be a natural time to switch a mask out. So I understand that. You may want to talk to your teacher about it beforehand, just letting them know that there's an additional mask coming in. We do not support mask wearing for elementary school children. Will this mean my children will not be able to attend Malone Central schools? I appreciate your opinion on that, but yeah, I'm sorry to say that your children are going to have to wear a mask while they're at school, and we're doing that for the safety of everyone in the building. Recently, I made a statement at a Board of Education meeting, and our Board of Education president asked if we could turn that, and I'm paraphrasing what he asked, but he asked if we could turn my statement into a form of a resolution, and I did that, and it was voted and approved unanimously, supported by our Board of Education, that our students should wear masks. Our board does understand the issue for mask breaks, but other than those breaks, they will have to wear those masks. Do you have dividers for their desks so they do not have to wear a mask at their desk? While dividers are being considered in some locations, students will still be required to wear a mask for a majority of the day, with the exception of those mask breaks. Would the kids be able to wear a face shield instead of masks? No, we would not be able to do that. I was hoping that we would be able to do this, but we are not. According to the Department of Health and CDC guidance, a face shield does not take the place of a mask and should only be worn along with a mask. And we will have some people that will have both a mask and a shield on. Those people who are taking temperature checks, our school nurses, some of our cleaning staff will have a shield. So you might see that throughout the day, but they'll have a mask on as well. Does our district have the infrastructure to meet the social distancing requirements? Yes, we're removing all non-essential, non-instructional items, along with half of the desk and chairs, allowing room to separate students with the required distance. What will social distancing look like in schools? How many feet in between each student? That will be the 6 feet between employees and students in all directions. How will students socially distance during passing periods in the hallway? We're going to have floor markers in all the hallways indicating the 6-foot social distance, and halls will be monitored by school staff as well. And we're hoping that our staff members can figure out a way, and I believe they can, we're going to limit the amount of transition in the hallway of classrooms exiting and entering at one time into a room. How will students report to lockers with social distancing requirements? We're looking at not using lockers during this time. We're going to ask students to bring their belongings with them right to the classroom. And each of the building principals, this is more of a high school and middle school issues, so our building principals and assistant principals will communicate with those middle school and high school students exactly what that means in their building. How will students at the middle school and FA move between classes? How will they practice social distancing? Signage will be posted in the hallways as people are passing classes. Generally, middle school students will be in the same classroom all day with a push-in model, but at the high school, when those students move from one room to a next, there will be staff that will supervise those students. There are certain classrooms at the high school we're not going to be able to keep the students in all day, because if it's particularly a science class that there's different materials needed, could be a variety of things where a student would need to go into a different room, but that'll be monitored throughout the day. Will high school and middle school students be able to walk in the halls and go to lockers? We won't be using lockers during the year, at least not at this time. How will recess and gym physical education class be handled? Physical education classes will follow strict guidelines when teaching students in person. When we're going to do some low impact activities, some aerobic activities, and we have to remain in for phys ed, and also for, I'll say it now, phys ed and for music classes, choral, for any of our chorus or singing, or our band that has any kind of wind instruments, anything where you're blowing air through a tube, or brass and woodwinds, they have to be 12 feet apart. So it's going to look very different than it has in the past. We're going to ask students to not change for phys ed because of the low impact exercises that we'll be doing, but we do ask that, the days that they do have phys ed, try to wear some attire that could be appropriate in a phys ed classroom, a t-shirt, maybe athletic pants. And there's several activities the phys ed staff have worked very hard on for our students to participate. Students be trained to how to clean their own workout space and expected to do so after every activity to provide a safe learning environment. Remote learners will be given an online curriculum. I'll have logs, journals, and expectations to meet virtually with PE staff members throughout the week. And just know that an elementary remote learning situation will look different than a secondary remote learning situation, but there will still be some interaction between the teacher and students. And then recess will be provided in some form at each elementary school, but that'll be hammered out by our instructional staff and our building principals, and would be a good time for those mass breaks we talked about. What will play recess look like for pre-K? Will they be able to play together, sharing toys? Will play be restricted to their own toys at their desk? Probably will be looking at something where play will be restricted to students using their own toys. But again, we hope to still be able to have a recess to go outside and take those mass breaks. We understand that there's some concerns about our pre-K and our kindergarten students staying in a room for that many hours during the day. So getting them outside as much as we can in a safe manner would be a good thing for us. How will you make sure everyone wears appropriate masks? Will there be clear guidelines for what is acceptable? This discussion is currently being had among our school nurses, and we're looking at providing training for both our staff and students on what an appropriate mask is. Generally speaking, the mask should be covering the nose and the mouth. Should be secure around your head. This one ties around the top and the bottom of my head. But there's some masks, you'll see people wearing them as chin guards, or it's not going to be acceptable. And there's some other types of masks that just won't work. But all that will be worked out right at the beginning of the school. Testing exposure protocols in the event of a confirmed case at school. What isolation protocols are in place? Each school has a designated isolation room separate from the nurse's office. These rooms are for separating the potentially positive person from the rest of the school population, and are chosen for proximity to an exit and the nurse's office. So if a student or staff member is in that isolation room, a family member is notified to pick them up ASAP and given instructions on steps to take for proper care and reentry to school. We are notifying the Department of Health if that were to happen, and we do have a process to clean that room right after that person leaves. And the cleaners will have additional PPE on when they do that cleaning. If you look at our reopening plan, which is on our website, I believe it's page 3 of our reopening plan. It talks the step-by-step guidance for reentry if a case like something like this happened. Will all those returning to school be required to get a COVID test before school begins? I think this is talking about our students and even our staff. No, we're not requiring all of our students and staff to be tested for COVID prior to starting school. If they can get through our questionnaires appropriately, we wouldn't see any reason for that if they weren't showing symptoms. If a student comes to school and shows symptoms, will quarantine measures be put in place prior to receiving results? All of this is right on page 3 of the reopening plan on what measures we'll be taking. And we'll be working with the Department of Health on this as well. What exactly is the protocol? If they have a symptom, will parents be notified before the student is tested? Is it mandatory that the student be tested immediately? What symptoms will be considered when needed to send a student home or be tested? This is all laid out on page 3 of our reopening plan. Students will not be tested at school. So what will happen is we'll notify the parent, we'll notify the Department of Health, and we're going to refer that parent and student to one of the testing sites in our area. And there are a couple of testing sites in the north end of the county and a couple in the south end of the county. And then we'll follow our reentry plan, working with that student before they're allowed to come back to school. Will you require a COVID-19 test for any student or staff member exhibiting symptoms? Yes, a test at this time. The guidance from DOH and SDD says a test is required before returning, and that's laid out in our reopening plan. And if that guidance changes based on test availability, we'll wait until we hear something from the Department of Health or the State Education Department. What is the plan if a student or staff tests positive for COVID? Will everyone be quarantined for 14 days? They had contact with that person. We're going to work closely with the Franklin County Department of Health on these situations that come up, but we'll also address these on page 3 of our return to school plan. Will children have to be tested often? Again, I've stated that we're not testing all of our students, and to be clear, the school district itself is not a testing site or organization. We just would refer for testing. If a child gets sick with strep throat, will they have to be COVID tested before they are allowed back to school? If they were showing those symptoms, and which led to them being referred to their medical provider, then at this time, most likely they would have to be COVID tested before they're allowed back to school. We'd be working with our medical providers, the Department of Health on those specific things. How are temperature checks? How are temperature checks making sure the students and staff are COVID-free when there are people that are asymptomatic, no signs or symptoms, including a fever? All we're doing is we're following the temperature checks, our requirement, and our state education department and the New York State Department of Health guidelines. So therefore, it's going to be part of our screening process. I understand your question, but we're just following the guidance, and it's a requirement. As fall brings illnesses such as the flu, respiratory infections, whooping cough, will modifications be required to medical exclusion policies? We're going to keep an eye on that. As of right now, there's nothing in there that would say that any modifications would be put in place, though. But that could change, and we'll monitor any guidance and feedback we receive from the New York State Department of Health. Is the post people have been posting on Facebook going to be done around here? Where if your child gets a fever in school, the school will send them home and allow the parents to pick them up till after they've been quarantined for 14 days and tested. So as of right now, if they're being sent home, we have a specific process in place, and that, and if they were exhibiting symptoms, they would have to be tested. If that changes, we'll change our plan. Students presenting a temperature. Okay, this probably answers that question as well. If a student has a symptom and is sent home, is it mandatory to be tested? Can they just quarantine at home and remain at home until they and return if they choose to? So if students have a temperature of greater than 100 degrees, they'll not be allowed to remain on campus, and will be provided a form outlining the protocol that will need to be followed to regain access to in-person instruction. This protocol is a minimum documentation or evaluation by a healthcare provider, clearing a student to return, a negative COVID-19 testing, and symptom resolution. Or if the COVID-19 is positive, a release from isolation as required by the Department of Health. Why are employees of the school allowed to take their own temperatures at home? We are having employees fill out a questionnaire each day. The guidance calls, because, well, the answer to that question is because the guidance says that this is a measure we can take. So we have to see how laborious the process is of screening all of our students as they enter the school building each morning. If we're able to start moving through that pretty quickly, then perhaps we could look at our plan and say we're going to be screening our staff as well each day. But as of now, this is an acceptable piece of the guidance document by the Department of Health, which would allow for employees to screen themselves and answer this questionnaire each day. How often will the faculty and staff be given a COVID test, especially those that live outside of the country and even in the country? We are not requiring COVID testing for our employees, of course, unless they fall into one of those situations where they are exhibiting symptoms. Will staff and students that travel to states or areas with high COVID rates during weekends or vacations be expected to quarantine before returning to school? As per the mandatory screening questions within the district plan, if a staff member travels to areas with high infection rates, they'd be expected to quarantine because they would have answered yes to one of those questions. But if there's a large outbreak, we have the testing capacity within our county. Honestly, this could be a triggering event for our district, and not just our district. It could be a triggering event for many districts in our county, and we are advocating strongly to increase our testing capacity here in the North Country. I co-authored a letter to our state and federal legislators that we sent out recently, advocating for increased testing capacity. How do we know the temperatures taken will be accurate? Our school health officials have been checking accuracy of our no-touch thermometers with other thermometers to review accuracy. We feel comfortable that we're in good shape there. Temperatures are being taken. I'll get to that one in transportation. Return to school note is required for reentry after attempt. Were considerations made for the pediatric offices who will be bombarded with the calls for appointments. The offices can't possibly accommodate all of these unnecessary appointments. Yep, none of these decisions are easy. And the districts are mandated to follow the regulations set forth by the Department of Health and the State Education Department. Then I know there's going to be a domino effect here. And I apologize for that. But we're following the guidance as it's written. At what number of positive cases in the schools will you decide to go all remote learning? This decision will be made in coordination with the Franklin County Department of Health, it would be one of those triggering events. Can you please elaborate on the plan to complete temperature screenings prior to children exiting vehicles? How will traffic flow be managed at the middle school, high school? We're confident with our temperature, with our accuracy of our thermometers, and work's being done at the building level regarding temperature screening for students who ride or walk to school. Parents bring their children to their classroom. We're not going to be able to allow that this year. Parents will not be allowed to take their children down to the classroom. We know that many of you have enjoyed doing that in previous years, but we will have staff members available to greet your children at our front of our building each morning. Hopefully we have a number of smiling faces greeting all of our students as they're entering the building, and our staff members will be available to make sure that we assist those students in getting to their classrooms. Elementary schools, they're working on a meet the teacher event or plan. So parents and children will have the opportunity to meet their teacher prior to the first day of school. What protocols will visitors need to go through? So if for some reason it's necessary for a visitor to be in the school building, they'll have to undergo the same screening procedures as a staff member. And those are outlined in our reopening plan. Will desks at FA and middle school be disinfected between classes? Yes, we have a cleaning crew that will be here during the day. Normally our cleaners work the second shift. They come in later in the afternoon and they work all the way through the evening. Because we have so much a cleaning regimen we have to follow, we'll have our cleaning staff actually here at the same time as our students. We don't normally do that, so we can stay on top of disinfecting all of these areas throughout the day and those common areas, bathrooms, lobbies, door handles, those kinds of things. And if a child were to get sick, any kind of cleanup that would need to take place. So yes, disinfected between classes. Can a child bring a book bag into the school? Students will be permitted to bring their backpack to school, as lockers and cubbies will not be used at this time. That would be something as a high school student, you might carry in your backpack, and instead of putting it in your locker, you go directly to your first period class, and there'd be a space in that room somewhere for you to set your backpack. And it'll be secure, and doors will be secure when no one's in that room. So we feel comfortable we've got a plan in place for that. Are the students going to get an orientation? And the next question is, will there be a 9th grade orientation? I think both these questions are talking about high school. So a 9th grade orientation is being discussed. Mr. Pelkey has responded to me, and he and I spoke this weekend about this, that working on an in-person orientation that could be planned, possibly bringing 9th graders in very, very small groups, and having several small orientation sessions, possibly even just with 10 students at a time. But he's working out those details, and we'll be in touch with those parents. Are the schools doing an open house, at least for the pre-K and kindergarten students? If not, why can't we schedule times to meet the teachers? We are planning to have some sort of open house for all of our elementary students. We want to work this out where we have an opportunity for you to meet their teacher, and not just for our pre-K and K. So we are working on that, and asked our principals to communicate that out. And we're meeting this later this week, and wherever we do it one building, I want it to be consistent across all of our buildings, particularly at the elementary school. When elementary children are released at 1:30, will there be a location for them to wait for parents at Davis? How long will this place be open for them? We know that when we dismiss at 1:30, every single student won't be leaving the building exactly at 1:30. There's going to be lag time a little bit with buses at each of our buildings, and we know we've got car riders that are being picked up. So yeah, there will be a location. Most likely it'll be in the teacher's classroom, so we can keep those groups and cohorts together. And we'll figure out how long that would be open to them in the afternoon. What is the bathroom policy? Students will be permitted to use the restroom as needed. That's why we have cleaners working during the day to make sure they're periodically going into all those bathrooms and doing cleaning. What PPE will be supplied to students and staff? Masks will be available for all attending in-person instruction for students. Our staff will be provided with masks. We know and encourage everyone to bring their own mask. You might have one that's more comfortable. And again, we'll ask our school health professionals to do some training on what an appropriate mask is and what it is not. We have rubber gloves and face shields and a number of other items for our staff to use to make sure everyone stays safe and clean. In classrooms with windows during the warmer weather, is it okay to leave windows and doors open? Once the colder air hits, what type of ventilation system will be provided in these rooms? Classrooms and windows and doors could and should remain open when possible for rooms without proper outside ventilation, for example, windows. Fresh air is being supplied to the building management system using the recommended MERV filter, and those were put in this summer. Will children with food allergies eat in a different room, or will they eat in the room with their class? Our school nurses will monitor all students with food allergies and work with the student family to develop the best protocol for that student. But that's done now. Our school health professionals, they do that now. So in this situation, it could actually be easier to do that. So they're prepared to do that. Why does our school require a full day for deep cleaning while other schools are able to go back 100%? All I can tell you is I wasn't involved in the development of any other school district's reopening plan. I was involved in ours. And in order for us to have the cleaning staff here during the day to clean up while students are going in between different spaces in a building, we need to do a deep cleaning of every piece of equipment and furniture, door handles, high-touch surfaces in the entire school before we let the next cohort in, which is why that's need for that Wednesday. That's why that's in there. We're going on to another topic about the models. Is the hybrid learning going to be for all of 2021 school year, or can we go back to traditional school at some point? The hybrid groups will need to remain for the school year, particularly at the middle school, high school, because of our master schedule. But, you know, the question about can we go back to a traditional school at some point in the year, all that is really out of our control. It'll have to come from revised guidance that might come from the governor's office or the New York State Department of Health. So, of course, we're going to keep an eye on that, and we'll follow any updated guidance that comes throughout the year. And if we can make adjustments, we certainly will. If I elect to remote learn on September 8th, is there a point when that can be revisited? Yes. On our website, I've placed 3 dates that people can revisit that decision. It's under the frequently asked question document. Why is Malone Central not having elementary go back 4 days a week like other school districts in the state that are the same size or bigger than ours? Well, one of our belief statements when we started this work is we wanted every student to have the opportunity to have some type of in-person learning, pre-K through 12. We also have 5 buildings that are spread across the village of Malone. We're not all on one campus. I know there are some districts who have their whole district is on one campus, elementary, middle, and high school, and they're able to spread out a little bit more. Take a couple of our schools like St. Joe's and Flanders, very small buildings, very small classrooms, not many rooms in those buildings at all. It's difficult to spread everyone out. And I'm in touch with literally hundreds and hundreds of other superintendents across the state. And there are many, many districts who are following the plan that we have here at Malone Central. I understand there are some neighboring districts that are doing some things differently. And the size of districts and size of their facilities and the location of those facilities all impact those decisions. One of the comments is about our committee structure. The committee who made our school systems plan are all staff and teachers. There are not any parents, not employed by the school in some fashion on the committee membership that's posted on the website. Can you explain the lack of exterior participation and true voice in this plan? The committee was comprised of members from the Board of Education, teachers, administration, support staff, parents, and students. We had opportunities for students to participate during the subcommittee and separately with some questionnaires and subgroups. We did the best we could in the time frame that we had to involve as many people as we could. And we garnered a lot of feedback from the surveys that we did. We do understand that people wanted a voice, and we felt like we did have good representation. Currently, there are 0 active cases in Franklin County. Also, when you look at other states that are effectively dealing with the outbreak, science has noted the mortality rate has significant, I'm not sure what that statement means. How can you validate your plan in the vocal teacher statements that they should not have to go back to work for fear for their safety? We can all go to Walmart where social distancing is not successful, go out to eat and play sports, but not have in-person school. Like a primary focus of our reopening committee was the safety of our students, staff, and families, and following that guidance. If there are other organizations and areas that aren't following those guidance documents, I can just say at Malone Central, we will be. I see that there is the option to switch from full-time remote learning to the in-school instruction on specific dates. I would like to know the policy regarding children who are initially choosing the hybrid in-school, but find after a week or so they cannot handle the changes. Can we switch them immediately over to full virtual instruction if our child's not doing well? So going from in-person to full remote, yes, you can do that throughout the year. You need to make sure you notify the teacher and the principal. And if you're a middle school or high school student, you need to make sure you notify your school counselor. Going from 100% remote to in-person, you can only do it during those specific dates that are listed on the website. The reason for that is we want to have tight control over who's in those cohort groups, so we don't have people just coming and going throughout the year. But we would allow you to go to the other direction. If a student begins to answer that question before, what would a day for a middle schooler look like? The middle school reopening committee is working on that right now. It includes a model schedule they'll be showing. It does look like there will be students that will be in a room. Teachers might be coming in and out of that particular room to limit the amount of time that students are out and about throughout the building. What would the day look like for a high school senior? Depending on the program, the day is going to look a lot different. If you're a senior who is in a BOCES program, let's say you're in the electrical trades program at North Franklin Ed Center, and you spend half a day at BOCES anyway, well, you're going to go to BOCES and receive your electrical trades program. We know that's really important, especially for our seniors. We've heard that loud and clear that you don't want to miss your BOCES program. We get that. So you'll be able to go to your BOCES program, receive your instruction, and then you would receive any remaining graduation requirements. You'd receive that in a remote manner. Your counselors will be in touch with you for that. Students who are actually here at Franklin Academy full-time will have 3 blocks or 3 periods a day. Blocks 1 and 3 will run for 2 hours and will cover your core classes and or your electives. And block 2 will will be 2 hours, but it's going to be broken up so you can accommodate, you can eat lunch, you can have physical education, take elective courses, or if you receive resource room, go to your resource room. Will students be given a full curriculum this year? Yes, for sure. We expect high quality, rigorous instruction throughout the year, focusing on those essential skills in each content area. It just won't be for a whole year. So if you're on a block schedule, if you're taking geometry, for example, as a high school student, you'd be done with the geometry by the end of the first semester. So in January, you'd be complete that course, and you take another course starting the second semester. How will students be graded? We did post our reopening, our grading policy at the end of last year for the remote instruction. We do need to edit some pieces of that, and we're going to be working on that and communicate that out to our parents and students. How will high school students that are looking forward to attending a course at North Franklin Ed Center be able to do so if they are remote learning? Students attending North Franklin Ed Center for CT programs would receive the in-person instruction in that respective program at BOCES. So if it sounds like this question might be more appropriate to be asked for someone at the BOCES building, so I would encourage you to reach out to them, but you'd be able to attend classes down there. How will attendance for virtual students work? Will they be expected to maintain regular school hours? There will be an attendance code created in SchoolTool for students on remote learning, and they will be required to sign in during their assigned class time, and attendance will be taken. Will Regents and other standardized tests be given this year? At this time, those tests have not been canceled. There are some things that would have to happen at the Board of Regents level in New York State for that to take place, and I wouldn't be surprised if those 3 through 8 ELA and math and the Regents exams were canceled again this year, but they haven't done that at this point. What is time is drop off versus class start time? Students at the elementary level may be dropped off at 7:20 until 1:30. The start time for elementary is 8 a.m. Students at the secondary level can be dropped off at 9:20. Start time is 9:45 to 3:20. Do we have to send our kids, or can we keep teaching at home with the help of their teacher? Fill out that commitment form that we have online. Fill that form out completely and submit that if you'd like to receive 100% remote instruction. Will New Visions Medical and New Visions Law students be able to continue? Yes, BOCES is still planning on offering the New Visions Medical and the New Visions Law, and the BOCES program will be in touch with those students. When will the high school students receive information about the child's schedule? Counselors are working on that as I speak today, and they're working on that. They have a goal to complete that by the end of the week and get those mailed out to all of our students and parents. How will Regents be handled with block scheduling? Okay, so let's pretend that the Regents exams are still going to take place this year. If they do, which I don't believe they will, but if they do, then there is a January Regents period. So if you're taking geometry in the fall and you're done that course in January, you would take the Regents in January. New York State knows that there's plenty of schedule changes across high schools across the state, so there's going to have to be adjustments made. So we'll wait and see. In high school, a student will have no more than 4 courses. Is that right? So a freshman takes freshman English, either fall or spring, but not both semesters. Is that right? Correct. A student will be taking 4 courses in the fall and 4 different courses in the spring. Do parents have to pick the same plan for the entire family? For example, can high school students choose remote learning and elementary choose in-person learning? Of course, you can opt to have your children do whatever you feel is necessary at your home. Will cohorts be evenly mixed of boys and girls? Will my son, daughter end up in a cohort that's heavy in the opposite gender? Cohorts are created alphabetically, last names A through LA and LE through Z. Believe it or not, it does fall in pretty good line with gender, actually, even doing those splits. So hopefully there's a good mix. The CDC is warning we'll have the worst fall ever. Would it be better to go remote for the fall to see how bad it gets? Since we know students will probably be okay, but what about parents and grandparents these students live with? This was taken into consideration, and we use that guidance. And again, our guiding principle was to try to offer as much in-person instruction as we could for pre-K through 12 students. And we'll just keep monitoring this for any kind of triggering events in our region. Can we see photos or video of what an elementary classroom will look like? Teachers are currently setting up their classrooms now. Teachers will be working with the building custodians to clean out non-essential teaching materials. You know what? I'm going to try to post a video tonight. I'll try to go to a classroom, possibly for that third forum, and show you what a room might look like. If I can't figure out a way to do it within the forum, I'll do it separately and post a link to that separately. But I will. That's a good question. I'll work on that today. For several different dates for classes begin. What's the official date? It is September 8th. FA, will students be moving throughout the building? Some students will be moving between rooms for classes, as I mentioned earlier, based on the class that they're taking. But the transitions are going to be minimized quite a bit throughout the day. Will study halls be offered? There might be some study halls offered at the high school level, but depending on scheduling and availability of classes, probably won't be a whole lot of study halls for students at the high school level. This one is about seniors picking their classes. Really, this is a specific question. This person should reach out to their, if you have a question about some courses that you think your children should be taking, really need to reach out to your counselor at the high school. I don't want to, this is a pretty specific question. I'm not going to answer it here. Will middle school, high school go back to using SchoolTool to track assignments grades this year? I found this difficult in the spring. Yeah, we're going to try to make sure that we're using SchoolTool and we have the parent portal option fully turned on for people to monitor their children's work. Questions about working families. I have kids in different schools going different times. They're walkers who live far from school. We are working with the local YMCA on a daycare program. We have 2 approved sites in the district. The YMCA will be promoting that soon, and they also are working on expanding those approved sites so we can offer multiple sites across the district for multiple students. I have children with the same different last names. Can I attend school on the same days? Yes, we answered that in the FAQ document. We will be able to do that. Is it possible to change the days that your children are assigned to? Again, the only exception would be the different last names in the household. For working parents of elementary age students, are teachers going to provide work that can be done after normal school hours? All teachers will be using Google Classroom as their platform. There's going to be an expectation students log into that classroom on remote learning days. And the video lessons, posted assignments will all be able to be there for students to view. The activities can be completed during or after school hours, and we also are working on providing additional support from staff members in the late afternoons or early evenings. Support is the district going to provide for daycare. We're working with the YMCA to provide this, and it looks like we should have something, or they should have something out very soon for you to look at as an option for remote days and after school hours, both those options. Why are younger children done earlier in the day? Some of them rely on older siblings to get on the bus and provide them with childcare. Wouldn't it make sense for the older children to be done first? A lot of research points to the fact that older students, teenagers, would perform better if they start later in the day. There's been research out there for decades on this topic. We also have a number of people that like the fact that their high schooler will be home in the morning to make sure their younger sibling gets on the bus safely in the morning and help out at home. So I understand that might be different for different families, but there's no one plan that's going to be perfect for every situation out there. Concerns about remote instruction. How will students get to work if remote learning? Again, work will be assigned through that Google Classroom. If students don't have internet access, materials will be printed and distribution will be arranged. However, we are working on alternatives for students to get better or even get internet access at their home. Will there be a schedule for virtual classes? Yes, there will be a set schedule for remote instruction. The expectation is that staff communicate with families of all students, especially those that are falling behind academically. When the kids are doing distance learning, will the login be at specific times? Yes, even like physical education teachers will be signing into a Google Classroom at the time your student will be scheduled for that class. If my child is struggling, can they get extra help? Yes, children could always email their instructors or guidance counselors for extra help or assistance, and we hope to be able to provide that in the late afternoon and evening time as well. Will parents have our own access to assignments and notes from the teachers? We're introducing a new way to communicate with parents this year. It's called Parent Square, and we hope that this will help both with two-way communication, but parents are encouraged to connect with teachers to establish some kind of communication regarding assignments and student concerns. We cannot give separate accounts for sites. The district licenses, the district licenses that we have are for student use only. And in the event that a student can't remember how to log on to site, just contact the teacher and we'll make sure they get help. Science labs, how are they going to receive that? At this time, we've not received guidance regarding science exams and the lab requirements. There was some flexibility in the spring. Again, we expect that again this year. Technology, will Chromebooks be provided to all students in the district or just 5 through 12? All students, pre-K through 12, will be assigned Chromebooks this year. We're very happy that we're able to do that. We're a very large district, so for us to be able to provide Chromebooks for all students, we're pretty proud of that. We are working on a plan to distribute those Chromebooks to both in-person and remote learning students, and we'll have that information out soon on how we're doing that, whether we're delivering them to your home or we're having you come pick them up at a specific location. We are working on getting mobile hotspots for families who don't have internet access at home, but do have a cell signal. We are able to provide some kind of hotspot for those families. Chromebooks will be for remote only. Okay. Will there be a time scheduled for students doing full remote learning to pick up Chromebooks before school starts? Chromebooks for remote only students will be delivered to their home address the week of September 1st. So there, I answered my other question with that question. Will elementary students be expected to bring their Chromebooks back and forth to school? This will depend on whether their teachers will be using them in person. If they will be needing them for the in-person portion, then yes. But that'll happen between the teacher and the student and parents, those kinds of considerations. This next question is basically stating their parent is struggling with some of the technology use and some of the programs we're using on Google Meet or using the Chromebook. It's quite a long question, and we have a remote learning resources page that we're constantly updating. Mr. Dalton is working on that as we speak, and I would suggest that you go to that website and walk through the tutorials that are on there, and there's plenty of options on there to click to receive additional assistance. It'll be linked right off of our main website. What is happening for kids that have an IEP or 504 plan and get special services? How will that be implemented? You really need to refer to your own child's IEP for that and interact with our PPS director's office. We do have a letter that Mr. McDonald has written that'll be posted on our website later today that explains generally the process for receiving those services, but individual questions should be diverted to that office. Services will be provided remotely for those students that are on a 100% schedule by the related service providers. If my child has a one-on-one aid mandated by the student's IEP, please let me know the protocol for the one-on-one being in my home for remote learning. The one-on-one aid is not legally allowed to provide direct instruction and therefore cannot be in your home. Aides have to work under the direction of a teacher in the building. How will resource room work for IEPs and test reading? If a student is remote, resource will be provided remotely. Test reading can be done remotely as well. Will my child still have an IEP meeting? Yes, all IEP, CSE meetings will be held either in person or through remote services such as Google Meet. Children that receive extra services like physical therapy, occupational therapy, and physical therapy more than twice a week. How are you accommodating this? Gets a little specific about their child. I'm not going to read much further, but I'm going to answer that. We're working on developing a schedule for students to receive those PT and OT services directly. If the family chooses remote services, I will develop a plan for those students in collaboration with the parents and the guardian. This is a different section, specials. Will there be extras? I think they're talking about like the special type classes like physical education, art, music. Yes, physical education, art, music will be taking place at all levels. We're happy to say that. I feel those courses are very important for a student's well-being. And physical education teachers are preparing lessons for both in-person and remote learners, and as well as art and music, and they're all going to meet those New York State standards. Will driver's education still take place? Our driver ed instructor is working on the curriculum and additional guidance from New York State to make sure that students receive the state mandated drive time and lecture time. There's very specific requirements for driver's ed. So our driver ed instructor will be in touch with those students on how we're going to get that done. We know it's a popular class offering here at the high school. How will band lessons be configured? The music department is working on a schedule for band and choral lessons and music instruction. So, yeah, let's face it. If a band and chorus have to have students that are 12 feet apart, we're not going to be able to have these large concerts like we've normally had for decades here at FA. We just don't have really any kind of a arena to put that many students 12 feet apart. So music department's working on some creative ways to provide lessons so we can keep students sharp. And we could do some smaller ensembles and one-on-one ensembles and do some virtual events because we want to make sure that our students remain engaged in both those areas. Excuse me. My daycare provider, this is transportation. My daycare provider is elderly with no internet. How are my children going to get the schooling they need those 3 days a week when they're not in school? Also, how is the transportation going to work with parents that get kids on the bus in the morning but need those children to get off at a daycare in the afternoon? What you need to do for that particular situation is designate the sitter location as the drop-off point on your form with the transportation department. It would be better if the parent chose the sitter's location as the pickup point as well. That way we can designate the same bus number and the same bus seat for that student. So communicate that with the transportation department. And some of that schooling that you're referring to without internet access, some of it could be done offline with the Chromebook. We do have a feature for work to be done offline, but if they could wait and do it in the afternoon or evening when the parents gets home, it could be some resources provided by the teachers at night. We are asking, this next question is about a custody issue and picking one particular bus pickup. We are asking that parents work this out to try to come up with one pickup location and one drop-off location. We need to keep our cohort groups together on those buses, and we're trying not to have students jump from one bus to another on any given day. So we are going to try to remain as strict as we can on that this year. We are transporting 22 students per bus, and we will be doing temperature checks each morning. Can a student arrive some days as a walker and other days as a drop-off? Yes, arrival to school as a walker or drop-off is flexible. Parent pickup would require notification before 1 o'clock if a child walked and needed to be picked up. What should my child expect to see at bus pickup or school drop-off? Masks, shields, gloves, gowns? Yes, definitely we'll expect to see masks, and shields and gloves will be used for, especially for those people doing temperature checks. Food service. Will breakfast and lunch still be provided by the school? Yes, we'll be offering a pickup or delivery option on Wednesdays. Students will sign up for it via an enrollment form. And that enrollment form will be posted on the district's website. Can a student bring their own lunch to school, or do they have to buy the lunch at school? Students can bring their own lunch to school. Lunch is grab and go using the cohort model. Does this mean their prepackaged lunch will be delivered to the classroom? Pre-K and kindergarten will be delivered to the classroom. All others will have a schedule where they'll go through the cafeteria to pick up their meals. The meals will be hot and cold, and our in-school menu will follow the traditional menu we always serve. On classroom days, meals will be packed in to-go packaging for consumption in the classrooms. And then for remote learning days, if you get food service delivered or you picked up, Meal kits will be made up of meal components similar to this past spring. Will students do remote learning be allowed to participate in school sports if they should happen later in the fall? Yes, per the regulations put out by the New York State Public High School Athletic Association, they will be able to participate. When will school sports be able to start? And I've got another one on here somewhere down. It says something about, well, Vermont, they're able to start school sports. Why aren't we? This is a state decision. So this is not a Malone Central decision or a North Country Region decision. As of right now, school athletics are scheduled to start on September 21st. The governor made it very clear in his press conference at the beginning of August that we were not cleared to begin athletics or sports this fall at this time. So we're still hanging our hat on that September 21st date. And we'll keep our athletes and parents informed as we get closer to that date and if any new announcements come out. But it is not a decision that we can make. We're not able to say here at Malone Central that we want to start fall practices and competitions next week. We can't do that. We have to wait until at least the 21st of September or when another announcement comes out that would affect everyone in the state. If you look at our reopening plan, we do have some plans in there if and when we do have sports, how those practices would work. Will the school offer sports physicals at some point? Based on guidelines put out by the state, any athlete who has had a physical since the spring of 2018 will be exempt from requiring a sports physical for the fall. If a student does not fit into this category, they will need to schedule a physical with their family physician. If needed, the school can provide a physical once we're in session. Will physical education and swimming still happen? Yes, physical education will happen. And at this time, they're working on seeing if we're able to provide that swim instruction or not. We're still waiting on guidelines on the use of pools. And so right now, we would not be able to offer the swim classes, but maybe that could change. And will we be required to keep phys ed logs again? There will be a time when students might have to fill out a fitness log, but there will also be able to attend Google meetings with classmates and their teachers and fill out the Google forms potentially together. And teachers will be giving full instruction during these Google Classroom meetings for students to be able to meet all New York State PE standards this year. And that last one is again about sports practices, and we won't know anything until we get clearance to begin those sports on September 21st. That brings us to roughly 220 questions or areas that we addressed in an hour and 24 minutes. For those of you that are still on the video call, the forum here, I appreciate you hanging in there with me. I'm going to sign off for now and sign back on for the 1 o'clock forum. I'm going to try not to repeat myself. I'm going to try to answer any new questions that come up for the 1 o'clock session. So I appreciate everyone's understanding, your flexibility, and it'll be a different year for sure. But I can promise you we will do everything we can to make sure our students feel safe and that they are safe and that you feel comfortable with them being here, or if they're in 100% remote, they still receive a high quality education. And that's our promise to you. We're going to work very hard to make sure we can deliver. So thank you very much. Hope you all have a nice day. This video will be posted online again later tonight or sometime tomorrow. Thank you.